If you've spent any amount of time following the story of How to Train Your Dragon, then you've probably begun to recognize how some of the dragons seem to share traits with their riders, making them great matches. Well, after diving a little bit deeper, I came to find that some of these comparisons go far beyond just a few key traits. In fact, I believe that each dragon is meant to be a mirror, a direct reflection of their rider. Hey y'all, I'm the Geek Apprentice, and a while back in that video where I compared the romantic relationship of Toothless and the Light Fairy to that of Hiccup and Astrid's romantic journey, I made some strong comparisons between Toothless and Hiccup themselves. This was something that quite a few people commented saying they really enjoyed and wanted me to make a video about all of the dragons and their riders. And in fact, that script was already in its beginning well before that other video was even published. My hesitation, however, was that it might just be this dragon is stubborn and so is this rider, and nothing more than that. However, once I began to finally take a closer look, I was able to see just how deep these similarities run. So today I will be unveiling the many ways each dragon reflects the abilities, appearance, and personality of their rider. Now, while I would love to cover every pairing, including some of the characters that only appear in the TV shows, such as Heather and her dragon Windshear, for the sake of the length of this video and for my own sanity when it comes to editing, I'm limiting it to just our main crew, meaning Hiccup, Astrid, Fishlegs, Snotlout, and Ruffnut and Tuffnut. But do let me know if you would like a part 2 to this video so I can cover more characters and dragons. While Ruffnut and Tuffnut are not conjoined twins, no doubt that the choice of the two-headed dragon, the hideous Zippleback, was meant to complement the fact that they are in fact twins. This is my own personal take, but I feel like that the putrid green color of Barf and Belch, fitting name by the way, or names, was kind of meant to be similar to the somewhat greenish tints in their clothing. Not a perfect match by any means, but there are subtle hints to this weird sordid green color in their attire. The Zippleback also showcased long necks, and Ruff and Tuff happen to have the longest hair of the bunch, so that ought to count for something. As previously mentioned, no, Ruff and Tuff are not conjoined twins. However, much like their two-headed dragon, they are seemingly always together. While it's mostly presented in the TV shows, Barf and Belch are quite goofy and not always the brightest. Now, who does that sound like? Certainly Ruff and Tuff do have some of their own finer moments, mostly in the Netflix series, but so do Barf and Belch sometimes. Finally, playing again on the idea of twins, Ruff and Tuff are at their strongest when they are engaging their twin-tuition, if you will. Likewise, a Zippleback is at its strongest when both heads are functioning well. The one with gas, and the one with the fire to ignite said gas. Two heads stronger together, goofy but with their own finer moments. Barf and Belch make the perfect match for Ruff and Tuff. A big softy, literally, Fishlegs does have some extra weight on him and is not exactly the fastest. His strengths are not in bronze, but in brains, but we're gonna continue with that later. Similarly, his dragon, a Grunkle, is the slowest of the breeds and kind of one of the plumpest too. Unique to Meatlug, the colorings are a physical match as well. Fishlegs has blonde hair and usually sports clothing that is like dark reddish brown in color. His beloved Grunkle Meatlug has this weird puce color, but with more of the reds and oranges, very similar to her rider. One other small detail. If you look at the helmet that Fishlegs typically adorns, it has these weird tiny little horns on them that look very similar to the tiny little winged horns on a Grunkle. Except for when he's Thor Bone Crusher, Fishlegs is most definitely a sensitive spirit, a trait that his beloved Meatlug shares. He's always commenting throughout the show how she's so sensitive about her weight. Now, while they are both gentle giants, they are also both fiercely loyal and willing to fight when they have to. Hufflepuffs for sure, except Fishlegs is probably Ravenclaw, right? Well, that's a different video. The two of them can use bronze when needed, but it's other underlying traits that are their strength. Brains for Fishlegs and the Grunkle iron making for Meatlug. Rather than relying on brute force alone, the way that they are assets to their team is because they have other traits that the others maybe don't have as strongly, and they strategize to use those underlying strengths very well. While all the pairings are really well done, I would say that this one, Fishlegs and Meatlug, is the most obvious of them all. Two warm-colored, gentle giants whose best abilities are showcased outside of direct battle. Something I found interesting about the pairing of Hookfang as a monstrous nightmare to Snotlout is that rather than reflecting Snotlout's actual appearance, Hookfang more so reflects how Snotlout views himself and not how he actually appears. So the physicality and the personality mesh in a weird, odd, but humorously satisfying way. As a monstrous nightmare, Hookfang is larger than life in both stature and name. Snotlout, on the other hand, well, he's kind of the shortest of the bunch. He can be strong, but yeah. Larger than life applies more to his personality than his actual physical look. Nonetheless, the physical appearances can be compared. Snotlout struts around as if he's the greatest thing next to Thor and Odin themselves. He sometimes dresses that way as well, so pairing him with an awesome dragon like the Monstrous Nightmare is actually decently fitting, even if just from a physical point of view. And just like with Fishlegs and Meatlugs, the horns on Snotlout's helmet kind of mirror the horns of a monstrous nightmare. Without a shadow of a doubt, these two characters go together so well. Snotlout and Hookfang are both prideful, stubborn show-offs who can be a bit clumsy at times too. In addition, they have both had their moments of showing their more emotional side. Take for instance in the first TV series when Hookfang got overworked and quite ill. During this hard time, Snotlout begins to show an immense amount of care and remorse, something he brings up in the Netflix series later on. Likewise, in Race to the Edge, we see Hookfang make the difficult decision to distance himself from Snotlout so he can protect this female monstrous nightmare and her eggs from this huge, much more threatening Titan Wing monstrous nightmare. While these two don't seem to always get along, it's probably because of how well they mirror one another. Almost like they're giving each other a taste of their own medicine. I have already gone into great detail with these two in my aforementioned video. Thus, more or less, I'm just gonna kind of copy and paste that segment right here. That also means this is not my last comparison. There is one more very important one after Hiccup and Toothless. Anyway, flashback time. One of the beautiful parallels between these two best friends is their physical appearance. Toothless has a prosthetic left tail fin, and Hiccup a prosthetic left leg. Hiccup has a scar on the right side of his chin from an encounter as an infant with Cloudjumper, the dragon that would become Valka's dragon. Notably, Toothless has a minor scar on the right underside of his neck, though we don't know where it came from. Both of these characters have fierce green eyes and dark coloring, Toothless obviously having jet black scales, and Hiccup having dark brownish hair. And finally, Valka points out in the second film that these two are in fact the same exact age. Concerning their personalities, a lot of it I think is pretty self-explanatory, so I'll just bullet point. Both exude somewhat annoyed sarcasm a lot. When confident and determined, they are forces to be reckoned with and make unlikely but strong leaders. When less confident, both are extremely but adorably awkward. At the end of the second film, both stepped into huge leadership roles, Chief and Alpha Dragon. Lastly, both seem to have a taste for blue-eyed, fair, independent women. And finally, my favorites, Astrid and her deadly natter, Stormfly. In my video about the mirrored romantic relationships, I more so compared Astrid and the Light Fury, but that was for the purpose of comparing their roles more than anything. And while the similarities are striking, again, it was more so to highlight how their roles in their respective partners' lives were the same, though there were similarities both on the outside and the inside. And while I'm not taking back anything I said in that video, as it is very clear that the Light Fury is meant to be to Toothless as Astrid is to Hiccup, what I am saying is that the traits shared between Astrid and her fierce, deadly natter Stormfly are much more strong and more plentiful too, and much more akin to what we've been seeing with the other riders and their dragons. The biggest and most obvious shared trait, physically speaking, is the coloring. To me, one of Astrid's most striking features is her big blue eyes. And what color is Stormfly? Bright blue. Continuing with shared physical abilities, Astrid is quick and light on her feet, something that was showcased in the first film, making her great at stealth. Deadly Natters, with their more bird-like resemblance, by their very nature, are meant to have that quick-footed trait. Astrid even trained Stormfly to have dominance in these two areas, feeding her chicken to make her faster and training her to be ace in stealth combat. And while this could be both physical traits and personality traits, Astrid and Stormfly are at their hearts warriors. Natters seem to be pretty darn loyal, and we know Astrid is loyal to any cause she feels is worth fighting for. Hence why her change in the first film is so awesome to see. By the way, neither Astrid nor Hiccup, except for a little bit when he's younger, wear helmets. And neither of their dragons have horns. Unless you want to count this stuff. But I don't. I'm talking about, like, horns. Just a side note there. Let's go back to the aforementioned loyalty. This isn't just part of being a warrior, but also kind of a case of their morale, especially for Astrid. Astrid will fight tooth and nail for something she believes is right, even if that means having a change of heart because she's been revealed this deeper truth that holds more water than her former position, like what happened in the first film when Hiccup opened her eyes to how dragons actually are. Stormfly never wavers in her loyalty to Astrid. Ever. Her brand of dedication is different than the one Toothless has for Hiccup. Yes, Astrid and Stormfly are friends, but for Stormfly, her obedience is more like a soldier. She trusts her rider 100% and will always fight for her. A prime example of this for both of them is in the Race to the Edge episode Blindsided, when both of them went searching for each other. Despite the fact that they were both in very precarious situations and scary situations, they were still focused on finding the other and making sure the other was safe. Loyalty. Finally, I believe both Astrid and Stormfly, by their nature, are leaders, but in their heart actually prefer a more co-lead or advocate role, or just simply preferring to be in the front line of battle. Stormfly always lets Astrid lead, trusting her judgment unless it's like a very tricky situation, and Astrid does the same. Astrid leads beside Hiccup without taking over, offering advice when asked or when she feels it is necessary. I know, Hiccup and Toothless are crowd favorites, and yes, they're favorites of mine too, but I just love the bond between Astrid and Stormfly, this warrior-like loyalty and bond, but also friendship, and they're just so similar and it makes so much sense, and they're one of my favorite comparisons to make out of all of them. That's why when I was told about how to train your dragon Build-A-Bears, Stormfly was the first one I got. Honestly, all of these comparisons were so cool. But now I want to know, what do y'all think of these comparisons? Did you find it interesting? Was it too on the nose? Let me know in the comment section below. And, like I said earlier, please let me know if you would like me to do more Riders and Dragons. If you enjoyed your time here, I would recommend looking at other videos of mine, or even considering joining the geekdom by subscribing. I also do live streams. It's so fun because I'm so bad at games, but I love chatting with you guys. Also, I don't often mention it in detail, but I do have a Patreon. It's a really cool little community where you can get access to things like my private Discord, poetry, a TGA sticker, name recognition, bloopers, movie commentaries, and a bunch more. So check that out if you want. It's just patreon.com/thegeekapprentice. Which, by the way, thank you to all of my patrons such as Lorulian Sheep, JokingBatman, Sushi Bandit, and Cheap Seats. Y'all are amazing and I really appreciate all of the support. Anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for watching.